G'day folks, my name's Chris Nitzo. This is an Oz Cyclone Chasers first up cyclone video update for Queensland. And I just want to show you some of the differences in the Queensland or the state updates compared to the one that you normally get on Facebook, which is just a very short 4 to 5 minute thing. This one is issued 3 times a week between November to April during quiet periods. So when there's nothing happening, it'll be issued on more than likely a Monday, a Wednesday and a Friday. It'll be issued every day during active cyclone periods between November to April. So if there's a cyclone around that particular state, so if there's a Coral Sea cyclone, for instance, we're going to see one of these updates issued. It's issued, every day. Issued once a week from July until November, so it's still important over the dry season to know if there is a little bit of weather happening at some point through that week. So those updates will be issued once a week, more than likely around about midweek. At this stage we haven't finalised that, but we will do by July the 1st, and we'll let you know. They'll normally go for between 5 minutes on a really quiet week to 20 minutes on an active week. They're once a week on Fridays. We'll actually look ahead for the next month and look at what conditions are going to be like. Why would you use these compared to just the free 4-minute ones? Well, these ones allow for a more localised focus. We can focus in on a particular area. So if we're saying the North Tropical Coast could be in for a lot of rain, we can zero in on parts of the North Tropical Coast and look at what parts are most susceptible. It allows for better decision making, whether you're a business person or an individual. It can allow you to, plan your week a little bit better, or plan your next few days a little bit better. They allow us to target into specific prone areas of severe weather. So if there's a specific region of Queensland, for instance, that could suffer some severe thunderstorms, then we'll talk about that particular region. So compared to the free and short updates, there's a little bit more depth and focus in these ones. There's more probability-based guidance. So if there's a high-risk scenario, so let's say one model's tipping 200 millimeters, and on our normal video update, we might be going with that particular model, but every other model might be suggesting 10 millimeters. We can give you a better probability guide as to what sort of rainfall you can expect, and I think that's one of the key things that people will find is hugely different between what you're going to get in the state videos compared to what you're going to get in the public ones. Sometimes the public ones are going to be way off, and that's because we don't take probability-based guidance into consideration for those anymore. We'll take it into consideration for these. Question and answer periods after the state videos. We normally will have a question and answer period for you to ask specific questions. Perhaps you want to know whether it's going to rain in a 6-hour period or a 12-hour period in 2 days' time. We can give you a better idea on what the chances are of that happening. So that's another little area that we can excel, or at least give you a little bit better guidance in. All right, folks. So let's get into the first of the state updates. Now, remember, these are a work in progress, so they're going to get more structured as we head into the subscription period starting in July. So over the course of the past 24 hours, we've seen some very heavy rainfall over the North Tropical Coast. Now, prior to that, we actually saw some moderate rainfall around the Central Coast with Sunday's area and heading in towards the Capricornia. And we even saw a continuation of that rainfall, particularly earlier yesterday, where we had some moderate to heavy falls here. Falls of upwards of 25 millimeters in many parts here around the Mackay area. Now, following on from that, we've seen falls overnight and late yesterday of falls of 50 millimeters plus on the North Tropical Coast and Tablelands region, more so the coast region rather than the Tablelands because they're in a rain shadow area. So we can see here falls around Tully, Mission Beach there of 50 plus. Around Innisfail, those falls got up a little bit more around the 100 millimeter mark between Innisfail and Babinda, and so we did see some fairly decent rainfall totals there. And also up around the Daintree, we saw some pretty decent rainfall totals as well, or just north of the Daintree itself. Also rating an honourable mention is Mornington Island with 78 millimetres as well in response to all that activity happening in the Gulf. So let's have a look at that activity in the Gulf. While most of the real stuff's happening to the north of the Northern Territory, we do have some fairly heavy convergence here yesterday around the Gulf of Carpentaria, and that's the resulting was the 78 millimetres that you had over Mornington. Also over here we've got a weak, or a fairly strong, onshore flow along with a bit of an upper level disturbance around the North Tropical Coast region, and that's creating the scenario there of those heavy, very heavy rainfall totals overnight in that particular region. We've seen an easing of rainfall totals in the Central Coast and Whitsundays, and that'll continue to ease now over the next coming days. In terms of the cyclone front, the Bureau are tracking a weak tropical low near the Solomon Islands, and we'll have a look at what some of the model guidance is suggesting on this. Not all global models actually pick this system up, but all that do actually move it in a south to southeast direction further away from Australia. So look, it's not going to pose a threat to the Queensland coast either directly or indirectly. It's not going to impact our weather either. So the system is expected to remain relatively weak throughout its life cycle and eventually move in towards Vanuatu. And look, once we start heading further to the south here, around about 20 degrees south in the long term, if it pushes that far south, we start to get into the situation where sea surface temperatures aren't exactly ideal. Remembering, of course, tropical cyclones require sea surface temperatures of about 26 degrees or more through a sufficient depth of about 50 metres of water to be able to maintain their energy system. And this is what I mean now. If we look at the FIM model, we really have no sign of that particular system. We do have an active convergence zone in here, and I guess the biggest issue is going to be the amount of rain that'll fall around the Solomon Islands, especially after what has happened to those people there with Tropical Cyclone Ita, or as Tropical Cyclone Ita was developing, some massive flooding developing in that region or happened in that region. We could see not so much a repeat because it's probably not going to be as intense, but we're going to see a few days of some very heavy rainfall on most of the Solomon Islands. So folks, that will officially end the tropical cyclone season for Australia in terms of any impacts towards the eastern Queensland region. So it has been a fairly active Coral Sea cyclone season. We had one severe impact of Ita, and then we had another impact of Dylan, and we've had Edna out there as well. So it's been a pretty action-packed season for the Coral Sea. So, for instance, by next Tuesday, we're expecting that low on most guidance now, both the Euro, the UK, and whatever the GFS has picked up in there, to be moving in a south to southeast direction away from Australia, and possibly just becoming one large trough, one part of one large trough system attached to a big low down south. And if we look up a little bit higher in the atmosphere at the 5 kilometre mark, we can actually see exactly why that system is pushing in a southeast direction and away from Australia. You can see here an upper level trough all through northern Coral Sea and the eastern Coral Sea, and everything in here that is north and east of that trough line will push in an east to southeast direction away from Australia. There is really very little doubt on this, so it's not expected to come towards us. And also with a trough that far to the north, amplifying that far to the north, is just going to be way too much wind shear for the tropical low here to form into anything too significant. And you can see what I mean with that track forecast. Here it is out to the southeast, but really quite slow moving, very weak. Once again, the big issue, that rain around the Solomons. So folks, there's no reason why we can't use this particular chart right now as a fairly decent guide as to where rain will fall. Once again, for the rest of today, we're expecting those isolated showers on the coastline, but really the heavier stuff remaining on the North Tropical Coast, and most of that heavier stuff starting to ease until tonight. Then as we head to Saturday, we can see that rainfall really becomes fairly sparse across the East Queensland coast. There are some showers on that more exposed part of the coast around the Mackay area, and also that North Tropical Coast region anywhere from about Rolling Stone northwards, which is quite typical this time of year to see those onshore flow showers. As we head to Sunday, we're going to see a decrease in rainfall once again, even around the Mackay district. It's starting to get very sparse. There are going to be some isolated showers over the southeastern parts of the state as well. And we're going to continue to see possibly a decrease even over the peninsula region as well as we head to Sunday. And then Monday we start to get some very dry air pushing up through Queensland as well. And we see a big decrease in any weather there. There are going to be some showers, possibly even some thunderstorms here over southeastern Queensland as a trough system impacts the area. And by Tuesday, it's pretty well bone dry across the state. You can see it's really starting to get into dry season mode, where we've only got some very isolated activity up here in the far northern parts of the peninsula and that very exposed coastal region of the North Tropical Coast and Tablelands. Even the stuff in southeast Queensland starting to ease off by Tuesday. And I guess pretty well right on cue then we have the start of the dry season, and this is what it's probably going to look like now for the next 6 months for Queensland. Very isolated activity along the east coast on the Tuesday to Friday next week. So very isolated activity on the east coast, and some more scattered activity possible towards the southeastern corner of the state. And I guess that's fairly common too during the dry season, where this part of the state does still receive a little bit of rainfall. But really, folks, it is pretty well right on cue, the start of the dry season for Queensland, for northern Queensland. So if we look at coastal waters forecast, we can see that throughout this period, we're going to see some moderate southeasterly winds and really not intensifying too greatly. We're going to see them at 15 to 20 knots. Inshore, obviously, they become a little less than that, but really not seeing much of an intensification, even with this little low out here in the far northern Coral Sea, just on the edge of your screen there. Really not seeing too much of intensification over the next 3 or 4 days as we just continue to get this south to southeasterly stream across Queensland. And you can see that low there bubbling away and eventually washing out into a trough system as we head to days 6 and 7. But really, folks, if anything, as we head towards later in the week, winds die down along the Queensland coastline, and that's positive news, I guess, for most people who are looking to go out on the water as we head towards later in the week. There are some signs that next weekend things might get a little bit more hectic on the water in the south, but over northern Queensland it looks very nice to be out on the water as we head into Friday and Saturday. As we head towards early May, we are likely to see a fairly strong trough system push through, and in behind it, we might actually see the first signs of winter around Queensland as well. So, not only are we seeing the dry season starting right on cue, we actually could be starting to see some of that colder weather pushing into Queensland as we head to next weekend and early the week after. So folks, during a subscription period, I mean, that would be the end of our normal update. However, what would happen then is that the update would be uploaded, then people would be notified, our subscribers would be notified, and then following on from that, I would give 10 to 15 minutes for people to watch it and then be online for about an hour or so answering questions about the update. So if there's any questions about when rainfall is expected to be at a maximum over so-and-so spot, that's the time I would answer that. So folks, that's how it's expected to work next year. So I'm hoping that that at least gives you some insight into what the state-by-state video updates are about. And then I think more importantly is that interaction afterwards for those that need more clarification about something. So if you want to know how much rain is the Solomon Islands, or are the Solomon Islands expecting, or is Honiara itself expecting, that's a situation where we could talk about it and message you and show you some rainfall statistics expected for that region. Same thing if you want to know, the rain's in Mackay, when's it expected to stop? We could talk at length about that sort of thing. So I think it's the interactivity post the video update that is going to be something that a lot of our subscribers will love. Alright folks, thanks for watching. Our next video update for state-by-state update, we will issue one more before the end of the season, and we'll issue that on the Wednesday, the 30th of April. So that's the last day of the Cyclone season. Thanks for watching today, and we'll talk then. Goodbye.